So we all kind of share this hope, don't we? That feeling of wanting financial security, and maybe more than that, hoping to leave something meaningful behind for the kids, for their kids. We hear this term thrown around a lot, generational wealth. But for lots of us, it feels, well, kind of like a secret club, right? Like it's just for people who got a massive head start. So what is it really? Why should we care? And maybe most importantly, if you're not starting with like a trust fund, how do you even begin?
Yeah, that's a really fundamental question. And actually, the source material gives us a pretty clear way to think about it. Generational wealth isn't necessarily just huge piles of cash. It's any money, any assets, really anything valuable you can pass down. So think about your house or investments, maybe a business you built, even just passing on solid financial knowledge counts. And the really big deal here, it can be the difference, between the next generation starting out life deep in debt or starting out with real options, a genuine advantage.
Okay, options. I like that. So let's really get into this. Our mission for this deep dive is basically to pull out the practical stuff, the actual strategies for building this wealth. Even if you feel like you're starting with, well, nothing, we want to cut through the fluff and just focus on what actually works.
Yeah.
All right, so diving in, one thing that really jumps out, like a golden rule almost, is this idea of buying assets that appreciate.
Yeah.
Things that go up in value. It's such a contrast to just, buying stuff that loses value the second you own it.
Exactly. And it's surprising how practical this can be. Like, instead of constantly getting a new car, which, let's be honest, drops in value immediately, maybe you take that money and put it towards a down payment on a small rental property. Or, instead of just letting cash sit in a savings account doing basically nothing, you could learn about investing in something like index funds.
Okay, what are those exactly for people who might not know?
Right. So index funds are essentially these diversified baskets of stocks. They're designed to track a whole market segment, like the S&P 500. It gives you broad exposure, usually with lower fees. It's a common starting point.
Got it. So spreading the risk.
Precisely. Or even something like buying a duplex. You live in one half, rent out the other. The point is you're acquiring things that have the potential to grow over time.
Yeah, that shift in thinking, it feels huge. Moving from just like immediate gratification, buying stuff now, to thinking about long-term ownership. Because these assets, they don't just boost your net worth today. They actually create something solid, something tangible you can pass on later. That house you bought carefully could be an inheritance. That investment portfolio you started, even small, it grows, it compounds.
Right.
It really forces you into that generational thinking, doesn't it? Realizing that these small, smart moves now can add up to something massive over, say, 20 or 30 years.
And speaking of assets, real estate really does deserve its own focus here. It comes up again and again as a really common, effective way families build that lasting wealth.
Okay, so why real estate? What makes it so powerful for this?
Well, there are a few key reasons the source material highlights. First, historically, property tends to appreciate over the long term. Second, it can generate income, right, through rent. Third, it's something you can actually pass down or sell relatively easily. And maybe the biggest kicker, banks are willing to lend you pretty large sums of money to buy it. That's leverage. It lets you control a large asset with a smaller amount of your own cash.
Leverage, right. But that's also where people get stuck, I think. That feeling of, okay, great, but I need to be rich to buy property in the first place. How do we get past that? What are the, entry-level moves?
Yeah, that's a super common misconception and a really important one to tackle. The source actually points to some very practical ways in. House hacking is a great example.
House hacking.
Yeah, like we mentioned with the duplex. You buy a property with 2, 3, maybe 4 units. You live in one.
And you rent out the others. Your tenants are basically helping you pay down your mortgage. Sometimes they cover it all.
Okay, so your housing cost gets reduced, maybe even eliminated.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or another way is just starting smaller. Buy a modest single-family home for yourself. Live in it. Build equity. Then later, maybe you move. But instead of selling, you keep it and turn it into your first rental property. These strategies make it much more doable than people think. You're building that equity right from the start.
And that equity, that's where it shifts from just having a place to live to building something more, right? It's not just a safety net you're creating for your kids then. It's more like a nest egg, something they can use as a launch pad.
A springboard, yeah. That's a great way to put it.
It's about buying freedom, maybe. Giving them choices, that head start that maybe you didn't have yourself. Okay, so we've got appreciating assets, real estate. But there's another piece the source really hammers home. Maybe even calls it the most important thing, even though it doesn't show up directly on a spreadsheet. And that's teaching financial literacy early. Oh, absolutely critical. The insight here is that so many families don't necessarily struggle because of laziness or lack of effort. It's often just not knowing the rules of the game, financially
The
speaking.
rules of the game, yeah.
And think about what those rules cover. It's everything from how credit cards really work, the good and the bad, to understanding the incredible power of compound interest. You know, where your money starts making money for you.
That snowball effect.
Exactly. Understanding loans, the basics of investing, how taxes work, how to actually budget effectively. And crucially, knowing the difference between an asset, something that puts money in your pocket, and a liability, something that takes money out. Schools often just don't teach this stuff, or not well enough. So the responsibility really lands on the family, and doing it well gives a massive advantage.
Wow. You can really see how that plays out over generations, can't you?
Yeah.
You end up raising kids who just know how to avoid those common debt traps.
Yeah.
They know to start investing early, let time do the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
They understand living below their means isn't deprivation, it's strategy. And they learn how to build different income streams.
Yeah.
It's like you're passing on the blueprint, the actual mindset that built the wealth, not just handing over the cash.
Which brings us to maybe a less exciting but absolutely crucial step. It's where people sometimes fumble the ball, as the source puts it. You can do all this hard work, save diligently, invest smartly, but if you don't have a plan for what happens after you're gone, those assets can get stuck, tied up in probate court.
Probate court. Can you just quickly explain what that is?
Sure. Probate is basically the legal process your estate goes through after you pass away. The court validates your will, if you have one, pays off debts, and distributes what's left. But it can be slow, expensive, and public. And if there's no plan...
Things get messy or lost altogether.
Exactly. Lost or distributed in ways you never intended.
It seems so counterintuitive, right? You work so hard to build it and then just neglect the final step.
Right.
So what are the absolute must-dos here, according to the source?
Okay, 3 key things. First, life insurance. Even a basic term life policy can provide a crucial financial cushion, immediate funds for your family if the unexpected happens. Real peace of mind.
Okay, life insurance, got it.
Second, write a will. Seriously, this is non-negotiable.
Yeah.
Without a will, the state decides who gets what based on predetermined rules, not your wishes. It prevents so many problems.
Right, don't leave it to chance.
And third, especially if you have more significant assets, consider setting up a trust.
A trust, how does that help?
A trust is a legal setup where you transfer assets to be managed by a trustee for your beneficiaries. The big advantages are that assets in a trust usually avoid probate court altogether. It offers more control over how and when assets are distributed, can offer protection from creditors, and might help reduce estate taxes. It ensures things flow the way you planned.
Okay, so will, life insurance, maybe a trust.
It might not feel like wealth building, but it's absolutely about wealth protection and transfer. It's sort of the ultimate financial adulting, really, making sure all that effort actually creates the legacy you want. So as we kind of bring this deep dive together, it's maybe worth zooming out a bit. Generational wealth. It's more than just money or property, isn't it? Fundamentally, it's about breaking cycles, maybe cycles of debt or cycles of limited opportunity. It's about creating options, giving the next generation a better shot, a stronger starting position than maybe you had. It's building potential.
Yeah, and I think that's really empowering, especially for listeners who maybe feel like, well, I didn't inherit anything. This whole generational wealth thing isn't for me. The message here is really powerful, isn't it? You get to be the starting point. You can be that generation, the one who builds the foundation, the one who says, okay, the old cycle, it stops with me. The new one, it starts with me.
Absolutely. And please remember, every single step counts. Don't get overwhelmed. Buying that first share of stock, even if it's a tiny fraction, that counts. Saving consistently for that down payment, even if it feels slow, that counts. Just really committing to understanding your budget. That counts too. You're planting seeds, just keep going.
So maybe a final thought to leave everyone with as they chew on all this. Think about this. What specific cycle do you personally want to break in your family? Or what specific option, what kind of freedom do you want to create for those who come after you? And how could some of the things we've talked about today be that very first step you take towards building that foundation? Really think about the legacy you're building, starting right now.